I never thought that dinner leftovers would be the thing that shattered my last illusion of peace. It was 9:46 p.m. on October 3rd, 2025. I was in my kitchen on Barclay Street in Waverly, drying the last plate, when my phone vibrated on the windowsill. It was a voice message from Camille, my daughter. I tapped it, expecting another grocery request, or maybe a thank you for the shrimp and grits I'd dropped off that morning for the boys. But what came through made my blood stop. "She's a burden we'll have to unload soon." Just like that. I stood there, staring at the wall while her voice kept talking in the background, laughing with someone. Casual, painless, like they were planning to take out the trash. I replayed the message. Once. Twice. A third time, this time with the volume down low, as if that could muffle the sting. Then I took a screenshot, right before the message vanished. Gone. She had deleted it. But my iCloud had already backed it up. The audio file was there, sitting like a coiled snake in my folder, labeled with the timestamp and her full name, Camille Massey, VN 214, MP3. I sat down in my favorite kitchen chair, the one with the cushion I sewed myself during lockdown. I couldn't feel the fabric, couldn't feel my hands. Just that sentence over and over. A burden we'll have to unload soon, as if I were some rusted piece of machinery in their way. And Camille, my daughter, who once sobbed into my lap when her ex packed up and vanished, who I let move into my house rent-free with her boys, who I supported through her master's program like a one-woman bank, she said it with a laugh. The same Camille whose groceries I picked up every Thursday, who used my name on the deed to this row house, who used my checking account, my account, to auto-pay their bills, who let her boyfriend Dante use my car last spring and called it family sharing. I pressed my palm flat against the table. It was cool from the night air creeping through the window screen. Numb. That's what I felt. Numb. Then a pulse of heat that spread through my chest, up to my ears, down to my fingertips. My whole body became thunder. They think I don't see. That age means blindness. That kindness means compliance. But my name is on the deed. My name is on the account. My hand signs the checks. And I don't go quietly. By the time the sky bruised into that soft Baltimore gray, I'd barely slept. I sat at my bathroom sink, the light overhead casting its usual harsh glow, and stared into the mirror like I was studying a stranger. Hair wrapped in a faded headscarf. Eyes darker than they used to be. Wrinkles carved deep around the corners. But the woman looking back wasn't weak. She was awake. Awake in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be in years. I turned the faucet on low and let the water run. My hands moved slowly, folding the washcloth, pressing it to my face, breathing deep into the steam. When I finally looked up again, I saw it clearly. This was the morning after everything changed. That's when the first call came. Camille. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Voicemail. A moment later, her voice floated through the speaker like honey mixed with vinegar. "Mama, just checking on you. Wanted to see if you needed anything. Call me." She called again 20 minutes later. Same syrupy tone. No mention of the message from the night before. No acknowledgement. Just that familiar sing-song concern I used to mistake for love. But I didn't answer. And I wouldn't. Not today. I opened my medicine cabinet, pulled out my little black binder, the one with all the important documents. The deed to this house, tucked into a plastic sleeve. The Bank of America checkbook linked to the joint account I'd set up in 2021 when Camille said it'd be easier to manage bills as a team. Back then, I believed we were still a team. That was before my pension became their convenience. $2,900. That's what hits my account every fourth Wednesday, like clockwork. Social Security, earned from 40 years in the Baltimore public school system. I'd budgeted carefully. That was more than enough for my food, my prescriptions, a few church offerings. But somehow it was also covering school clothes, late phone bills, Dante's Uber Eats habit, and last month's new tablet for the boys. Always, just for now, she said. But I checked the routing numbers this morning. That money lands straight into our joint account. And from there, it flows wherever Camille taps and swipes. Not anymore. My name is Lorraine Massey. I am 68 years old. I pay attention. And I do not answer to guilt, masked as sweetness. The days before that voice note had a rhythm, a soft, relentless kind of rhythm, like the hum of a refrigerator you stop hearing until it breaks. Every Tuesday morning, I'd walk 3 blocks to New Light Baptist for Bible study. Miss Geneva always saved me a seat, third row from the front, right by the window where the breeze nudged the curtains. We'd read scripture, sip lukewarm coffee, pray for families who didn't show up. Camille's name had been on that prayer list more times than I care to admit. Thursdays were for groceries. Camille never asked in so many words. It was more of a weekly text. Hey mama, can you grab almond milk and some of the boys' granola bars? Oh, and they outgrew their socks again. Love you! That message came September 21st, along with a photo of my youngest grandson holding a pair of Holy sneakers, looking pitiful and staged. I went to the Safeway on York Road, spent $86.34. I kept the receipt. I always do now. That same week, on the 26th, a PayPal request hit my phone for $112, labeled School Fundraiser. No school name, no details. Just Camille's email and a little emoji of a pencil. I transferred it. Like always, in September alone, I counted $742 spent on what she labeled urgent family needs. I wrote it out, neat columns on lined paper. Groceries, $298. School-related, $196. Emergencies, $248. One of those emergencies was Dante's parking ticket. Paid with my card, no apology. Just a shrug when I brought it up. I walked that same Northwood Commons route every week, past the Dollar Tree, past the liquor store, past the barber who always waved even if he didn't know my name. I used to feel purposeful on those walks, like a cornerstone in my family's structure. But looking back, I see it clearly now. I was their infrastructure, expected to hold steady while they piled more weight on top. At church, Ms. Geneva pulled me aside last Sunday, after service. Her voice was low, careful. Miss Lorraine, I don't mean no harm, but how come we never see Camille? We pray on Tuesdays. Maybe she don't know. I nodded, made excuses, said Camille worked odd hours. But deep down, I knew Geneva was just the first brave one to say what others had long suspected. I wasn't always weary. There was a time when I would have fought dragons for Camille. I still remember the sound of her crying in my arms the day Marcus left, February 2017. She showed up on my porch with 2 plastic totes, a duffel bag, and swollen eyes. Her coat was soaked from sleet, her shoes scuffed, the knees of her jeans worn thin. I had just finished folding towels on the living room floor when she knocked, her voice barely a whisper through the door. Mama, he's gone. He said he ain't ready to be a father. I didn't ask questions. I pulled her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, made her tea. That night, she curled up on the couch, one arm around her belly. I slept on the recliner next to her, listening to her breathe, just like I did when she was a baby battling asthma. She was 26, broken, and mine again in a way I thought I'd lost. The weeks that followed were full of small sacrifices. I called Miss Carter over at Morgan State and helped Camille re-enroll in the graduate counseling program she had abandoned when Marcus moved them to Richmond. I co-signed her student housing application, paid her security deposit with a check that overdrew my account by $54. I didn't tell her, I just made do. When she went into labor that November, it was me in the delivery room, not Marcus. I held her hand while she screamed, whispered prayers, cut the cord when they placed that beautiful boy in her arms. She wept, overwhelmed, and whispered, I'm going to repay you tenfold, Mama. I promise. She moved back in with me full-time the following spring. Just until I graduate, she said. That turned into 5 years. I helped with late-night feedings, paid for a new radiator on her Honda, even took out a personal loan to cover an unpaid semester when her FAFSA got delayed. I remember sitting at the bursar's office with Miss Carter in December 2019, her hands gently folding mine across the desk, whispering, You've done a lot for that girl, Mrs. Massey. She said it with admiration, but now I hear the quiet warning under her breath. Between 2017 and 2022, I traced it back. Over $31,000 poured into Camille's restart. Rent, tuition, childcare, car repairs, medical bills, and I never once kept score. Until now. Because something inside me has begun to ask, what is love without return? And what do you call it when it starts to feel like debt? That morning, with the house still silent and Camille's calls unanswered, I sat down at the kitchen table with my calculator and 3 manila folders. I labeled them care, house, and accounts. If they were going to treat me like a burden to be unloaded, then I needed to know the weight I'd been carrying all these years. I started with the obvious, the student loan payments, $275 a month, every month for 2 years. That alone totaled $6,600. Then the $1,200 root canal in 2020 that she cried about over the phone during a thunderstorm, her voice crackling through bad reception while I paced this very floor, trying to find a way to cover it before the infection spread. Paid on my care credit. 0 interest if I paid it off in 6 months. I did. I moved through my bank statements, chronologically. The $800 I wired to her in 2021 after she called me from the side of I-95 with a broken axle. The $400 in Target runs for diapers, clothes, and school supplies every August like clockwork. The $2,000 I lent her in April 2022 after she said the landlord was threatening eviction if she didn't cover the balance. I asked her for a receipt. She sent a blurry screenshot that I now know was fabricated. I printed it anyway. Item by item, line by line, I documented everything. The $350 I used to fix Dante's cracked phone screen after Camille begged on his behalf, saying it was his, quote, work phone. The $619 I paid for a new fridge when theirs broke, even though it went into my kitchen. I tallied gas money, co-pays, birthday cakes, babysitting hours unpaid, groceries unreciprocated, Uber rides I covered with my debit card. The final number stunned me. $47,360 over 7 years. I circled it 3 times in red pen. For a moment I sat back in the chair, feeling like I had stepped outside myself. Like I was looking down at a version of Lorraine Massey, who had slowly, lovingly, willingly funded someone else's adulthood, while shrinking her own. I stared at the care folder, like it might come alive and shake its head at me. Camille once said, "You always do too much, Mama." She meant it as a compliment. But now, I see it for what it was. A recognition. She knew. She knows. That money didn't fall from the sky. It came from my pension, my personal Wells Fargo account ending in 9,320, my savings, my life. The first red flag didn't wave. It whispered. May of last year, we were standing in line at Sephora in Towson. Camille had insisted on treating herself after a rough week with the boys, and I'd tagged along, mostly to keep her company. She picked up a few skincare sets, foundation, lip stain, her usual ritual when life started pressing in. The line was long. Her phone was in one hand, my card in the other. I had handed it to her earlier for gas. "Just get $20 worth," I'd said. She nodded, tucked it into her back pocket. At the register, I wasn't paying attention. I was reading a text from Geneva, something about the Tuesday women's brunch. I only looked up when I heard the beep of a successful charge. $218.63. She blinked like it surprised her too. Then that smooth smile slid into place. "Oops, I thought that was my card." A light laugh. "They look exactly alike." I said nothing, just nodded and followed her out of the store, clutching the receipt like a splinter in my palm. That night, I checked my online banking. Sure enough, there it was. Sephora number 2,256 minus $218.63. 2 days passed before I asked if she planned to reimburse me. "Oh, Mama," she said, breezy as ever. "I'll transfer it tomorrow. Promise." It took 2 follow-ups and a firm tone, one I rarely used, before she sent the money back. But even then, something in her face shifted, like I'd broken an unspoken agreement. That was the first time I truly noticed the lines blurring. She'd always had access to my fridge, my car, my time, but that moment made it clear. She felt entitled to my wallet too. And not just entitled, offended when I asked for correction. I brought it up at the bank a few weeks later, almost in passing. Lisa, the teller I've known since back when she worked the coin machine, leaned in. "Ms. Massey, you might want to keep your card to yourself, family or not. We see things, especially around the 5th of the month." Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were firm. That comment stuck with me. I didn't know it then, but she was handing me a quiet warning, the kind you give someone walking into traffic. Camille never apologized for using the card. Not really. She framed it as a mistake, as if my card had simply jumped into her hand. It started with a favor. That's how she framed it. July 12th, 2025. It was a sticky day, Baltimore in full summer, when Camille breezed into my bedroom holding her laptop, And that tone she uses when she wants something but doesn't want to ask directly. "Mama," she said, smiling, "can we simplify your bills? I keep seeing those late fees. It'd be so much easier if I just help manage your accounts, just until we catch up." I was sitting on the edge of my bed, folding a load of warm towels, the scent of lavender still clinging to the fabric. My utility bills were laid out beside me: BGE, water, Comcast, all due within days of each other. I'd paid them faithfully every month for years, even when the pension came tight. The occasional late fee? Human error, not neglect. Still, I hesitated. Her voice was syrupy, practiced. She crouched beside me like she was helping a child with homework. "I'm not trying to take over, Mama. Just co-manage, like a safety net." I didn't want a safety net. I wanted boundaries, but I was tired. It had been a long week. The water heater had gone out again, and Dante had taken my car without asking. Again. I nodded, slowly. "Just co-manage," I said. She sat down beside me, opened her laptop, and began typing. I remember the exact screen. Baltimore Gas and Electric's login page. She asked for my password. I gave it to her. And just like that, the lockbox of my financial life clicked open. By the time she left that afternoon, Camille had added herself as a, quote, co-user on my BGE account. I didn't even know such a role existed. She set the bills to autopay using an app linked to her phone. "See?" she said, showing me the screen. "Now it's all streamlined." I didn't say much, just nodded and thanked her. But the next morning, something inside me itched. I called BGE's customer service line, waited through the hold music, and asked the woman, Danielle, I think, if anyone had accessed or changed my settings. "Yes, ma'am," she said after a pause. "Camille Massey was added as a user on July 12th at 2:42 p.m. I remember staring at the clock. It was 9:08 a.m., and my house felt foreign, like something had shifted beneath my feet while I folded towels and tried to believe I was still in control. It wasn't about the bills. It was about the breach. That password had lived in my head for 5 years. Now it lived in hers. I hadn't meant to hear it. I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop. September 28th, a Thursday. The kind of Baltimore day where the air feels heavy, full of whispers. I was walking back from the laundry room at the end of the hall, just 6 steps from her bedroom door, when I heard Camille's voice float out, sharper than usual. "She has no idea," she said, followed by a soft laugh. "Once she moves out, that kitchen is getting gutted first. I already picked tile." Dante's voice chimed in, low and oily. That old place is ours soon anyway. You know it's just a matter of time." Then another laugh. The kind people share when they think no one else is listening. Confident. Certain. I froze mid-step, the warm basket of folded laundry pressing against my stomach. My breath caught. I don't know what I expected to hear. Maybe complaints about dinner? Maybe a squabble about the kids? But not that. That old place. My home. The house I bought in 1998 with Bernard, before he passed. The same walls I painted every few years. The kitchen I cooked Sunday dinners in. The back porch where I'd sit with a paper and a glass of tea, listening to the Orioles on low volume. This house wasn't just structure, it was proof of survival. And yet, in that moment, I became a placeholder in my own narrative. They weren't whispering about how to help me manage my bills. They were fantasizing about renovation, about what to do with the space once I was gone. As if I were an outdated appliance they couldn't wait to replace. I backed away quietly, returned to my room without dropping a sock. I closed the door, sat on the bed, and pressed record on my phone. Voice memo. I whispered what I'd just heard. Every word, every inflection, just in case. Then I sent it to my iCloud, backed it up to my desktop, and labeled the file hallway092825.wave. Later that evening, Dolores, my neighbor across the street, came over to borrow sugar. I asked if she'd heard anything odd lately. She hesitated, then nodded. "I was out trimming my bushes last week," she said, "and I heard Camille talking to that man. Sounded like they were planning to repaint your shutters. But you hadn't said anything." We shared a look. No one had to say it. The next morning, I tried to address it, gently, with care. I even made coffee the way Camille likes. Half a spoon of sugar, splash of oat milk, mug warm before pouring. I thought maybe if I softened the corners, the truth could come out without cutting. She came into the kitchen wearing her favorite robe, the satin one with the embroidered C on the cuff. She looked tired, distracted, like someone too busy to be guilty. I slid the mug toward her. "Sit with me a minute," I said. She looked at me cautiously, then sat. "I wanted to ask you something," I began, steady but soft. "I overheard you and Dante talking in the hallway the other day. About the kitchen. About moving me out." Her expression didn't change. Just the tiniest flicker in her eyes, like the moment a candle snuffs itself out. She sipped, slow, then tilted her head. "Mama," she said, her voice dropping into that patronizing register she saves for when she wants to seem calm. "I think you misunderstood." I held her gaze. "I know what I heard, Camille," she chuckled, feigning lightness. "Okay, let's say you did hear us. You've been really stressed lately. Maybe you're reading into things. That's all." There it was. Gaslight, neatly folded into a coffee break. "Reading into things?" I repeated, more to myself than to her. "You said this house is yours soon. That you already picked tile." "Mama, come on," she said, setting the mug down too firmly. "It was just talk. We were venting. You're making something out of nothing. You've been a little paranoid lately." That word stung more than I expected. Paranoid. Like I was fragile. Like I'd imagined the voice note, the added accounts, the careless laughter about the house I built. I didn't say much after that, just nodded, stood up, and rinsed the mugs. She moved on with her day, humming in the hallway, sending voice messages into her phone with a lightness that felt practiced. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. It wasn't long. Just 4 sentences, scribbled in block print. She lied. She knows she lied. She thinks I'll forget. She's wrong. I closed the journal, slid it back under my mattress, and turned out the light. The house was quiet again. The morning air on October 6th felt different. Sharper, somehow. Like the sky itself had drawn a boundary overnight and dared me to do the same. I stepped out onto the back porch just after 7, a light breeze brushing the hem of my robe, the smell of dew and distant fried bacon drifting from someone else's window. I held my notebook to my chest like armor, then opened to a fresh page. At the top, in thick blue ink, I wrote one sentence. I will not be erased. Not from my home. Not from my history. Not from the financial legacy I built brick by careful brick. That line sat on the page like a stone dropped in still water, and I felt the ripples immediately. This wasn't a declaration for Camille. It was a reintroduction to myself. I read it aloud once, quiet but firm. Then I underlined it twice. Inside, my phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. I walked to the counter, picked it up, and saw a notification from Instagram. Camille had posted a photo of the boys on the porch, my porch, smiling, surrounded by pumpkins I hadn't bought. The caption read, "Home sweet home, home nail polish medium skin tone, #Tagore next chapter." There it was, her intention made public. I stared at the screen, at the house tagged as hers, at the casual possessiveness of the caption, at the emoji nails, sharp, proud, flippant. She had declared it before I had, to her friends, to the internet, maybe even to herself. The house was already hers in her mind. But legally, that was still my name on the deed, my ink, my payments, my sacrifice. I went to the hallway closet and unlocked the fireproof box. The key was taped behind the broom handle, where it had lived for years. Inside, the original deed, notarized in 1998, when Bernard and I signed the final papers. His name had been removed after he passed. Mine stood alone now, strong and clean in bold type. Lorraine E. Massey. I held the document in my hands like scripture, ran my fingers over the raised notary seal. Then I laid it flat on the kitchen table. Camille could tag, post, and imagine all she wanted. But this paper? This was proof. Hard, binding proof. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees. The morning was still early, but I'd already decided. The pretending was over. By 10:14 a.m. the next day, I was seated at the Bank of America branch on Charles Street, across from a woman named Sharonda, who didn't smile but didn't flinch either. I liked her immediately. She wore a deep burgundy blazer, no nonsense. Her nails were short, polished, clear. I placed a folder in front of her marked actions in all caps. Inside, the house deed, my ID, the Wells Fargo statements, and the joint account authorization form Camille had me sign 3 years ago for convenience. I slid it forward, and my voice didn't waver. I need to remove my daughter as an authorized user. I also need to revoke all shared access. And I'd like a new account, mine alone. Sharonda didn't blink. She nodded once. Yes, ma'am. Clicking began. The gentle rhythm of keys, paper sliding from tray to tray, the low hum of printers activating. Every so often she'd look up for a signature, and I'd meet her gaze head on. She didn't ask why, didn't need to. The evidence was printed in my withdrawals, in the unbalanced deposits, in the overdraft protections that had kicked in twice last month. Quiet clues I hadn't noticed because I hadn't been looking. She handed me a cancellation letter with the date and time stamped in the corner. October 7th, 2025, 10:14 a.m. At the bottom, a line in clean legalese. Authorized user Camille Massey removed. That one sentence felt heavier than the folder I'd carried in. I opened the Safe Harbor title app on my phone and confirmed what I already knew. The house remained in my name alone. No liens, no joint claims. Still secure, still mine. Next, I pulled out the notarized copy of the power of attorney I'd signed in 2021 when Camille insisted it was, just in case something ever happened. It had lingered in my drawer like a trap waiting to be triggered. I want to revoke this, I said, sliding it across. Sharonda took it gently. You'll need to file a revocation with your attorney to make it formal. But we can log it here for now. No one can act on it through this branch moving forward. When I left the building, the sun had climbed high. I paused on the sidewalk, letting it hit my face. Camille had called 12 times during the appointment. I didn't answer once. My money was mine again. My name stood alone. And my silence was no longer a gift she could spend. That evening, I stood under the fluorescent hum of the FedEx office on Franklin Street, surrounded by the scent of toner and the faint beep of self-serve printers. The young man behind the counter, Marcus, had a calm, deliberate way about him. Wire-rimmed glasses, earbuds in one ear, his braided hair pulled neatly into a low bun. I handed him a USB drive labeled LM Trust folder. Need 3 full copies, I said. Color, tabbed, labeled. He slid the drive in, skimmed the files, then glanced up with quiet respect. You want 'em in order? Legal? Audio? Financial? Exactly. While the machines churned to life, I sat at a small round table in the corner and watched the pages emerge, one by one. Receipts, screenshots, emails, notarized forms. I'd organized it all the night before, each file meticulously named, time-stamped and sorted into folders both digital and physical. Camille had always been careless with paper. She called it old school, but I knew better. Paper is permanence. Paper gets validated. Paper makes people nervous. One section held all the grocery receipts, bank transfers, and Venmo logs going back to 2018. Another, a transcript of that 44-second hallway recording, complete with audio waveform and witness note from Dolores. The legal folder contained the POA revocation draft from Cheryl Banks, my lawyer, and a deed scan labeled House Ownership Full.pdf, certified in 2016 when I refinanced through Safe Harbor. There was also the iCloud screenshot of Camille's deleted voice memo captured at 9:46 p.m., October 3rd. A second screenshot of her Instagram post tagged at my address. A folder of Ring camera captures she didn't know I had. I'd seen this kind of paper trail in courtroom dramas. Now it was mine. Marcus returned with 3 neatly bound packets, tabbed and labeled with perfect alignment. You want digital backups too? They're already backed up in 3 places, I said, patting my bag. One on a flash drive, one in my Dropbox, and one in the hands of my attorney. He smiled, clearly impressed. You got your bases covered, I nodded. I didn't used to. But I do now. He handed me a small receipt for the service, and I tucked it into my wallet like a badge. As I stepped into the cool night air, the folders pressed against my ribs like armor. I wasn't gathering evidence. I was building a firewall. Camille could call it paranoia if she wanted. 2 days later, I walked into the New Light Baptist Church conference room with a folder in one hand and a prayer in the other. The room smelled of lemon polish and coffee that had been sitting a few hours too long. Ms. Geneva was already there, seated by the window, her Bible in her lap. She gave me that look, half curiosity, half concern. Pastor Reese followed, tall and lean in his charcoal suit, his expression gentle but alert. Then Cheryl Banks stepped in, crisp in a navy dress suit, briefcase swinging by her side like a gavel. I'd known her since she helped with Bernard's estate in 2016. Sharp, patient, no patience for nonsense. "I appreciate y'all meeting me," I said, setting the folder on the table. "I think it's time I stop pretending everything's fine." Cheryl opened the folder, scanning quickly, her eyes pausing on key phrases: revoked POA, unauthorized access, joint account removal. She gave a small nod of approval. "This," she said, tapping the top sheet, "is a start." I felt Ms. Geneva's hand rest gently on mine. "Lorraine, why didn't you say something sooner?" "Because shame speaks louder than need. Because when your own child treats you like a utility, you start to question your right to protest." Pastor Rice leaned forward, elbows on the table. "This isn't just about money, is it?" "No," I said. "It's about being erased, slowly, sweetly, until all that's left is the part of me that pays the bills." They listened, really listened, as I walked them through the sequence. The voice memo, the Instagram post, the automatic withdrawals, the planning I overheard in the hallway. Camille hadn't just crossed a line. She'd redrawn the map without me on it. Cheryl reached into her briefcase and pulled out a retainer agreement. "I'm ready to proceed," she said. "We'll file the POA revocation first, then draft a formal cease access letter, and if necessary, an eviction. I'll need $2,500 up front." I handed her the envelope I'd prepared, money I'd withdrawn from my Wells Fargo account that morning, in crisp hundreds. "I'm ready," I said. She slid me a copy of the signed retainer. Ms. Geneva offered to help with whatever I needed: church announcements, rides, even a witness statement. Pastor Reese prayed over us all before we left, a quiet, resolute prayer. That night, I walked home with my shoulders square for the first time in months. The tide was turning, and this time I wouldn't be alone in the water. The office at Banks & Howell, LLP was cold in that professional, intentional way. Glass doors, matte black accents, every surface clean enough to reflect your thoughts back at you. Cheryl's assistant offered me water. I declined. It was October 10th, 2 days after the church meeting. The sky outside Lexington Market was the color of pewter, threatening rain. I had a manila envelope in my lap containing the letter I'd spent 2 days writing, rewriting, and finally notarizing. At the top of the letter, in bold, notice of termination of residency permission. I'd wanted it to sound calm, not angry, not pitiful, just final. Cheryl took it from me, read silently, then nodded. "This says everything it needs to." Camille had once said I was dramatic when I changed the locks after a plumbing contractor made a mess. "You overreact to everything, Mama." I could still hear her tone, playful on the surface, but sharpened underneath. So when I told Cheryl I wanted the letter notarized, filed with the Baltimore Housing Authority, and delivered by certified mail, I did it knowing Camille would roll her eyes, call it petty, say it was too much. But I wasn't writing for her approval, I was writing for the record. The letter included exact dates: move in, first request for shared utilities, confirmed voice memo timestamp. It outlined that she and her dependents were no longer authorized to reside in the premises as of October 14th. It stated that any future access without written consent would constitute trespassing. Cheryl added her firm's letterhead as a cover page. "This gives it weight," she said. I nodded. My hands didn't shake. They had the week before, when I traced the words on the deed. But today, they were still. The stillness that comes not from peace, but from decision. Camille had sent me a meme that morning. Something about mamas who love hard but be trippin'. I hadn't replied. Instead, I dropped off 2 certified copies of the letter, one to the Housing Authority office, one into the FedEx envelope addressed to Camille Massey, care of my own home, $75 for the filing, another $13.50 for the certified mail. Worth every penny. Later that night, I sat in my recliner with the heat pad on low and reread my own letter. She came like a storm that had been waiting for the right heat to rise. October 12th. A Saturday. I was on the porch deadheading my geraniums, the red ones that still managed to bloom despite the chill. My shears were dull, my knees stiff, but my spirit? Sharp as it had been in years. Camille's car screeched to a halt in front of the house. No warning, no text, just tires biting asphalt and doors slamming. She stepped out in leggings, a hoodie and fury painted across her face. Dante stayed behind the wheel, engine running. "Mama!" she barked before even reaching the steps. "We need to talk. Now." I didn't move. I wiped my hands on my gardening apron, stood tall, and said, "Camille, I think anything that needs saying can go through my attorney now." Her nostrils flared. She climbed the porch in 2 strides. "You're not serious with this letter nonsense. Eviction? Are you out of your damn mind?" I didn't flinch. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, already recording. "See? This is what I mean," she said to the camera, her voice rising. "My mom is having some sort of breakdown. She's unstable. She's kicking her grandkids out. I'm documenting this for custody court if it comes to that." Custody court. The words landed like ice water, weaponizing the boys, the very same children I'd rocked, fed, picked up from school, using them as a threat. "You think this'll make me look unfit?" I asked, my voice steady. "Your name's not on a lease, not on a deed, but mine is. And I have documentation of every dollar that's passed between us since 2017. Do you want me to pull it out right now?" She hesitated, eyes darting to the Ring doorbell I installed last year. I saw the recognition settle. Every word, every threat, every performance, it was being captured. "You can't do this," she hissed. "I'll tell people you're sick. I'll have them believe it." "I'm not sick, Camille," I said quietly. "I'm just done." The screen door clicked behind me as I stepped back into my house. She pounded the frame once, open hand, full of panic, but didn't follow. I called the police non-emergency line. Officer Deshawn from precinct number 2 came within 30 minutes. I showed him the footage. He filed it as civil escalation, just in case. The next morning, I changed the porch code. Only I knew the new digits. The lower fellowship hall at New Light Baptist had hosted fish fries, baby showers, even a repass or two, but never a reckoning. October 14th, 5:30 p.m. sharp. I paid the $75 rental fee in cash that morning, with Pastor Reese, quiet assurance that the room would be left to the Lord and the ledger. The folding chairs were already set up when I arrived, 12 in a circle, projector screen at the front, table with water pitchers and paper cups off to the side. I brought my laptop, a black folder marked Truth, and 3 dozen printed packets stacked with the weight of a courtroom exhibit. Ms. Geneva helped me arrange the chairs. "You sure you're ready?" she asked. "I've been ready," I said. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. At 5:27, the first ones arrived. Dolores from across the street, Cheryl Banks in heels sharp enough to slice, and Pastor Reese with his Bible tucked under one arm and his reading glasses perched low. By 5:35, the circle was full. Camille walked in last, 15 minutes late, wearing a blazer I'd never seen before, and sunglasses that didn't belong inside. She looked around like she'd walked into a play she wasn't invited to. "What's this?" she asked, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "A family meeting," I said, standing near the projector. "And a clarification of facts." She gave a dry laugh. "You dragged everybody here for drama?" "No," I said, connecting my laptop. "For documentation." The screen blinked to life, blue light spreading across the room. My slideshow began with the title, "Where the Money Went, 2017 to 2025. A calm font, white background, no bells or whistles. Just numbers, dates, and images. First slide, the $31,000 I'd spent helping Camille through grad school, itemized by semester, linked to receipts. Next slide, screenshots of PayPal and Venmo transfers, grocery receipts, the Sephora charge, the care credit statement for her dental bill, the BGE email confirming her co-user access, Then the hallway recording, a single quote in bold. "That old place is ours soon anyway." She shifted in her seat. Final slide. The deed in my name, the revoked POA, and a red-lined ledger totaling $47,360. Pastor Reese cleared his throat. "Lorraine, would you like to speak to this?" I looked at Camille. "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's correction. Public, because the silence was private too long." Camille opened her mouth, but no words came out. The room stayed quiet, heavy and still. At exactly 6 p.m., I handed out the packets, 12 in total, thick with documentation. Each one labeled Truth, L. Massey versus Misuse of Trust, printed in 14-point font. I passed them out like communion, steady, deliberate, page edges crisp against my palms. Camille sat stiff, arms folded, but her face twitched when she saw Cheryl Banks open her copy with a pen already uncapped. The others followed, Dolores flipping straight to the bank logs, Ms. Geneva adjusting her glasses to read the voice memo transcript. Pastor Reese didn't say a word. He just read. Inside each folder was everything. Not just a narrative. Evidence. Printed screenshots of Camille's deleted voice note, time-stamped 9:46 p.m., October 3rd. Her Instagram post with my address tagged, "Boys posed on my porch" beneath a caption that claimed a life she hadn't built. A copy of the bank letter from Sharonda, authorized user removed. A notarized copy of the revoked power of attorney. The final ledger of $47,360. "None of this is the full picture," Camille muttered. "Y'all don't know the full story." She stood, tried to gather her purse, but Cheryl Banks, cool as ever, tapped the inside door latch. "It's locked," she said flatly. "For now." Camille's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "We agreed," Pastor Reese said, folding his hands, "that we'd all stay until the documentation had been presented fully. You can speak afterward. Right now, we're here for clarity." Dolores cleared her throat. "Camille, I heard you myself, that day in the yard. You said you couldn't wait to redo the kitchen. Said the house was already yours." Camille turned on her. "You're taking her side? You barely know what goes on in our house." Miss Geneva shook her head. "We know what doesn't go on. Like gratitude. Or truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I kept every receipt because part of me knew this day would come. The pretending wore thin. And now we're here." Camille sat back down, slow. Her bravado crumbled in inches. Not all at once. She flipped through the packet, page by damning page, until her hands stilled at the letter of eviction. "I tried to help you," she whispered. "You don't know what it's like to feel desperate." "I do," I said. "I just never turned it into entitlement." The last page bore 12 signature lines, one for each witness present. By 6:29 p.m., every line was signed. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. It was the sound of a verdict, delivered without a gavel. On October 16th, I stood in my own foyer, with the new keys still warm from the locksmith's hand. They were heavier than the old set. Different shape, too. Thicker teeth, smooth brass. He'd finished changing all 3 locks just minutes earlier. Front door, back porch, and basement. I paid him $150 in cash, plus a $20 tip. He didn't ask why. People who change locks for a living tend to recognize the weight behind the request. As his van pulled away, I turned the key in the front door twice. Once to test it, once to feel it. The click echoed like punctuation. Inside, the silence felt earned. Camille's things were gone. She'd come 2 nights before with Dante and 2 large bins, moving quickly under the streetlight while Dolores stood at her fence, arms crossed. I watched from the upstairs window, no words exchanged, no tears, just motion and distance. I blocked her number that same evening. I didn't send another warning. The final communication came from Cheryl. A garnishment notice served through the court, listing a repayment plan for $18,000, restitution for misuse of joint funds. Cheryl advised we wouldn't recover it all, but dignity doesn't require interest. The spare bedroom, once hers, had been emptied, the bed stripped. I opened the blinds, let the sun in, and placed a vase of cut mums on the nightstand. By noon, Ms. Harris from Mount Vernon came by to sign her lease. $850 a month, utilities included. A retired librarian, quiet, neat, full of gentle laughter. She brought a peach pie on her second visit, said her previous landlord had gone sour. I needed peace, she told me, and a place with sunlight. I smiled. You came to the right porch. Later that afternoon, Cheryl finalized the paperwork for the protective trust. The house was now shielded, its ownership legally bound in my name only, untouchable by future claims or family whims. A new will, a new beneficiary plan, no more loopholes. I took one final step. I printed a photo from 1998, Bernard and me, on the day we closed on the house. We stood in front of the porch, keys in hand, joy spilling from our faces. I placed it in a frame on the hallway table, beside the new keys, not for nostalgia, for proof. This house began in love, and now it would continue in peace.